The first thing they handed me at that resort wasn't a drink or a hug. It was a card. Thick paper, folded in half, with my name written in cursive, and the exact place where I was supposed to sit. Table 27, side wing. It wasn't a mistake, just the kind of decision my family had learned to make without blinking. The main hall was full of white decorations, rows of glasses, and glass columns reflecting the guests' excitement. I walked in quietly, greeted whoever still remembered my name, and went straight to my seat. It was far from the dance floor, far from the cameras, and far from any real intention of including me. Once again, the message was clear. You're here, but you're not really part of this. The bride, my sister Lauren, floated through the room like she had just won something. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. In her mind, I should have been thankful just to get an invite. But what no one at that wedding knew was that the story they were celebrating had a crack running right through it, and what was coming wasn't fate or some accident. It was just the moment when things finally were about to fall into place, including me. My name is Lucas Whitaker. I'm 31 years old. I live in New Haven, Connecticut, and I work in public infrastructure. I started out as a field assistant and became a team lead before I turned 30. I don't have a college degree, but I deliver big projects like someone who does, with more discipline and less talk. I learned everything on the job. I've never shared much about my life with anyone. Maybe because, early on, I realized that what I went through didn't matter much to people. My dad was diagnosed with cancer at the end of my second year of college. Lauren had just turned 14. My mom went into management mode, that cold kind of efficiency she called being proactive. She needs to keep her routine or it'll throw everything off, she said. So the solution was to send Lauren to our aunt's place in California until things settled. And me? I dropped out, moved back home, and took over the bills. Someone had to keep the floor from falling out. I worked for a contractor the family knew. It was concrete, dust, and noise, but it paid. Meanwhile, my sister sent pictures from the beach, her new friends, and drama class. Lauren's sensitive, my mom kept saying. You're stronger. Even sick, my dad would nod, probably because it was easier than disagreeing. That's when I learned not to expect a pat on the back for doing what had to be done. By the time he got better, almost 2 years later, I had a different rhythm. College was pushed aside. Life had moved me forward, and there was no looking back. Lauren came back with a new accent and a different haircut. They welcomed her with cake, balloons, and a last-minute dinner in the yard. It felt like she had returned from war, but the ones who held things together were us, and nobody threw a party for that. They always called me practical. That was the word. Never generous, never reliable, just practical, like carrying everyone's weight was a skill. Over time, I became the brother who fixes things, the one who drives when someone's had too much to drink, the one who lends money and never asks for it back. Lauren made drama and got comfort. I held it all and got silence. When she got into a psychology program, my mom cried. She said she always knew Lauren would help people. That sentence stuck with me for days. Help people. I kept thinking about how many dishes I washed, how many bills I paid early, how many times I tucked a blanket over our dad while he slept on the couch, without anyone noticing. But in that moment, helping meant knowing how to name your feelings. I just held things together. No badge for that. 4 years later, her graduation invite came. It wasn't addressed to me, it was for my parents. But they said, "Of course you're included." I sat in the back rows. On stage, she gave a speech about gratitude and family support. She thanked our mom, our dad, her friends from college. After the ceremony, she gave me a quick hug. Without you back home, I think everything would have fallen apart. That was the only time she acknowledged anything, but her tone was too light for what I had carried. Time passed. In the last 5 years, we only saw each other at family gatherings, cousin weddings, milestone birthdays. She always smiled, hugged everyone the same, and asked about my life like reading a headline without opening the article. I started fading from the family's memories. Even the framed photos at home stopped including me. Picture frames with 3 people, sometimes Lauren alone, other times just my parents holding hands. In my mom's jewelry box, a string of birthday photos, all Lauren, none of me. I just realized that some people are loved loudly, and others are only noticed when they're gone. I was never gone. I was always there, always useful, always available. Until one day, you realize that being helpful doesn't mean being seen. It just means being needed. and my sister's wedding felt like the perfect ending to that equation, an event I was invited to, but left out of the picture. The music started before the hall was even full, people laughing loudly, waiters balancing trays of champagne glasses, that well-rehearsed choreography of celebration. My mom, Marjorie, passed by with a polite smile, like she was greeting a vendor. "Isn't everything beautiful?" she said. I nodded. This was all about looks. Lauren moved through the room like she was managing her own image. She hugged with precision, smiled for just the right amount of time, and tossed out lines that sounded rehearsed. When she passed me, she waved quickly, like spotting someone across the street. She didn't stop, didn't even pretend to, just kept walking. Right next to her, Marjorie beamed with pride, the kind of pride she never showed when I got promoted, closed my first big project, or bought my apartment with clean money. None of that ever earned a photo. My dad, Raymond, saw me and waved from a distance. He didn't come closer. I thought he might be awkward, but I realized it was just comfort, the kind of dad who watches more than he steps in. He preferred to keep the peace by pretending nothing was off. I stood by the dessert table alone, not a new feeling. I've been the one holding the napkin holders at other events, the one who drives people home, the one who takes drunk aunts back. Being invisible always had its use. One of the groomsmen bumped into me while laughing. "Sorry, man." I nodded. Cole walked over with a drink in one hand and his blazer half open. "Hey, stranger, taking in the view or just hiding out?" he joked. I gave a polite smile. "Just here to watch this time." He laughed. "You should come around more. This family's got way too much going on to see it all from the sidelines." We were quiet for a few seconds. I looked over at the side of the room, where they'd placed the more modest arrangements. Trying to keep the conversation alive, I mentioned that if he was around New Haven next week, I had extra tickets to a Bruins game. "Nice, but I'll be out," he replied casually. "Heading to the Caribbean for a few days, just a nice resort, nothing major, need a break from everything." I just nodded. He finished his drink, adjusted his jacket, and headed back to the group of groomsmen, where Lauren was laughing and mingling. The conversation didn't register as important, just another throwaway chat people have at weddings. I didn't connect the dots. At that moment, it was just another polite absence wrapped in friendliness. After that, one of my aunts called me over for a photo. One of those shots where everyone squints and smiles, then crops the image down to only the people who matter. I stood off to the side, a bit behind, ended up in partial shadow. No one noticed. Not even when I quietly slipped back to my table. My name was still there, printed in gold, but the seat next to me was still empty. When the main dishes were served, I was seated between two distant uncles arguing about politics with a mix of arrogance and bad facts. They had no idea I worked in public infrastructure. I was ignored the entire meal. I asked for water, ate in silence. Lauren walked by holding a glass, pretended not to see me. Owen was across the room, laughing with friends. Everyone was where they belonged, playing their part. The night played out just as expected. Polite smiles, recycled jokes, toasts that dragged on too long. No one noticed when I stopped trying to join in. I was just there, in the background, like a picture frame leaning against a wall. I thought about leaving. I had done my part, showed up, smiled where expected, stayed quiet where that was the norm, but something made me stay. It was just that feeling that some structures only break from the inside. And in that room, no matter how out of place I felt, I was still part of what needed to crack. When they announced the cake was coming out, everyone turned toward the main table. Lauren appeared arm in arm with Owen, the groom, smiling like she belonged in a magazine spread. The guests clapped with excitement. They saw a beautiful woman, well-dressed, confident. What no one noticed, or pretended not to, was how she placed herself at the center, like the rest of the family was just background. The official photographer was moving quickly. Someone pointed him toward the parents' table, and he stopped near me. "Mrs. Whitaker, does the brother go in this one too?" he asked politely, but loud enough to hear. Lauren didn't even pause. "Oh, him? No need. He prefers to stay off to the side. He's always been like that." She said it with a smile, already turning her back. Marjorie didn't react. Raymond straightened his collar. Everyone got into position for the picture. I stayed still. I was used to her sharp remarks, but this time it felt like too much. It wasn't just being left out quietly, it was a public dismissal. While everyone clapped, I noticed a woman watching me from the center table. Elegant posture, steady gaze, dark blue dress. I recognized her right away, Estelle Radcliffe, the groom's mother. She wasn't smiling. She also wasn't pretending to be excited. She was looking right at me, not with pity, but with presence. She didn't look away when our eyes met. It lasted only a second, but it was clear. She wasn't caught up in the party. She looked like someone who was paying attention to what no one else wanted to see. I quietly returned to my seat, finished the last glass of champagne, and took a deep breath. I didn't feel angry, just clear-headed. It was obvious now. To my family, I was an extra piece, something you only use when it's convenient. They had already picked the version of the story they wanted to tell, and I wasn't part of it. I decided it was time to leave. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked toward the side door. No rush, no drama. Lauren was taking a picture with Cole and his date. She didn't even notice me walking by. I crossed the hallway in silence. The walls were lined with pictures from other weddings. They looked like parodies, people posing to look happy. I kept walking, picked up my jacket from the coat rack, adjusted it on my shoulders, and made my way to the side exit. The sounds of the party got softer with each step. Laughter, glasses clinking, speeches, just more voices from the same stage as always. In the stone hall, I stopped next to one of the big white lily arrangements. Outside, cars came and went. People were arriving to clap for promises I knew wouldn't hold. That's when I heard the footsteps. They weren't rushed, just steady. Estelle stopped a few feet away. She didn't say anything, didn't smile, but she didn't hesitate either. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. She was holding a glass of champagne but didn't even raise it to her lips. She didn't ask anything right away, just observed. When she finally spoke, her voice was clear and calm. "You're leaving already?" I dodged. "Yeah, just feeling a little tired." She kept her gaze steady, understandable, then added, "Sometimes it's more dignified to step out of the frame than to keep being part of the backdrop." And she walked back inside. For the first time, I felt like someone in there truly understood what was happening, even if they didn't say much. The sound from the ballroom was still buzzing in the background when Owen showed up outside. He came alone, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, but his eyes steady. He found me leaning on the stone wall that overlooked the parking lot, stopped a few steps away. "Estelle said she saw you step out, wanted to know if everything was okay." I nodded. Just needed some air. Was going to leave quietly. He didn't laugh or try to argue, just stood there, like he knew there was more behind my answer. "Is it really okay?" he asked again, this time quieter. I shrugged. "You know me, Owen. I'm not one for drama." He nodded slowly but didn't move. Ran a hand through his hair, then said, "Can I ask you something straight?" I crossed my arms. He looked at me firmly. "Do you think I'm making a mistake?" I didn't answer right away. He took a deep breath. "With Lauren, do you think I'm doing the right thing marrying her?" The question had weight, but no anger. It was honest, but heavy with expectation. "Owen, I wasn't supposed to be the one answering that today." He paused, but pressed. "Be straight with me. I've always respected how honest you are, even when you say little." I couldn't dodge anymore. "Since you asked, I'll answer. She makes people orbit around her without even noticing. I've watched it my whole life." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I spoke more quietly, but didn't hold back. "She controls, without yelling, without asking. You give in, and you don't even realize." I nodded toward the ballroom. "Everything turns around Lauren." Silence. Owen took a deep breath, crossed his arms, and said, not mockingly, but tense, "You sound jealous of your sister, Lucas." I wanted to say no, that I just didn't want anyone else to go through what I did all my life, but I said nothing. The mood shifted. It was the kind of moment that could turn into blame, where doubt could turn into confrontation. And then, before either of us broke the silence, Estelle's voice came from behind. "Lucas is right." We both turned. She walked up from the side, shoulders back, calm voice, steady eyes. She stopped between us like she already knew exactly where she needed to be. "Sorry to overhear, but I couldn't walk away," she said, looking at Owen. "There are things you don't know, but you need to before it's too late." Owen took half a step back, surprised. Estelle stood firm. "If you marry Lauren, you might be making the biggest mistake of your life." The words hung in the air like a crack in glass. Owen didn't respond, but something in his face said the ground under him had finally started to shift. Estelle asked to talk in private. One of the resort staff showed us to a side room near the library wing. It was quiet, with beige linen sofas and dim lighting. Felt like the kind of room the party forgot. The three of us walked in. She closed the door gently. No one said anything at first. Owen stood with his hands in his pockets. I crossed my arms and waited. It didn't feel like a conspiracy, just like something that finally needed to come to light. "I'll be straight about what I think of Lauren," Estelle said calmly. "The prenup was a problem from the start, not because it existed, but because she dragged the process out for months. Asked for changes, questioned details, said it felt too cold, and in the end, she signed, but only after tweaking it exactly how she wanted." Owen looked down. She went on. "I'm not saying she was against it, just that somehow she always had the final word, even on things that didn't matter." Then she brought up the wedding planning. Every time I tried to help, she'd smile politely but push me aside. Lauren would say, "Don't worry, Estelle, I've already handled that," but it was only on things she cared about, the big stuff, main vendors, timing. Even though I paid part of it, I was only allowed to weigh in on little details, table d'hôte, party favors. She gave a quiet sigh. What struck me most was how she made it seem like she was including everyone, but in the end, her opinion was the only one that counted. There was a pause, just long enough for the air to feel heavier. Then Estelle added, "Okay, maybe it's all small stuff. I let it go to keep the peace. Until, Owen, honey, have you noticed how close she's been getting to Cole?" Owen frowned. "He's my friend." Estelle nodded. "Exactly. That's why it bothered me. If it were someone from her own circle, it wouldn't stand out, but he's from yours. And since the rehearsal dinner, I've noticed the looks, the small requests, the overdone effort to act distant whenever you were nearby," she said. "Son, something about it feels off." She chose her words carefully. "I haven't seen anything obvious, no clear signs, but once something bugs you, you start seeing what you used to ignore. Cole was always around, but only when you weren't, and she always backed away just before it got too noticeable. That's what made me start paying closer attention. And honestly, I've never seen that kind of chemistry between just two friends." Owen rubbed his face, like he needed time to think, and was starting to feel uncomfortable. He said, "Lauren just wanted everything to be perfect. She's thorough. She gets involved in everything, from the invitations to the playlist, even the honeymoon." His voice had a hint of frustration. "She picked Anguilla months ago, every detail planned." The name hit me wrong. It sounded too familiar. "Anguilla?" I repeated. Owen nodded, though hesitantly. "Yeah, why?" The memory clicked. "Now that you mention it, earlier I invited Cole to watch the Bruins game next week. He said he couldn't, said he was going away, taking some time off. Somewhere in the Caribbean, I think." Estelle turned instantly. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "He didn't go into detail, just said he was going off-grid for a few days." At the time, I thought it was just his polite way of saying no. Owen didn't move. He stared at the floor like he was trying to figure out if this made sense. I kept going, calmly. He was vague, just said Caribbean, but now, with Anguilla, it's sounding way too specific to be a coincidence. Estelle didn't say a word. She just stared at her son. There was no pride in her face, only the quiet control of someone who saw this moment coming. The room didn't explode. It was a silent collapse. Owen walked over to the edge of the table, leaned on it, and stayed there, breathing like every breath took effort. He still wanted to believe it was something simpler, a coincidence, a misunderstanding, but it wasn't. The pattern was too clear now to ignore. I didn't say anything else, but in my head the question was spinning. Isn't it weird for the groom's best man to go on vacation at the same time, to the same place, as the couple's honeymoon? When was the last time that happened by chance? Not among adults, not in silence, not after everything that had already come up. Owen raised his head, but didn't look at me or Estelle. He just adjusted his shirt cuff and walked to the door. His face didn't show anger, just weight. The kind of expression people wear when truth stops being an idea and becomes a real consequence. He left without a word, but no one in that room doubted what was coming next. Estelle sat on the arm of the couch, like her legs had caught up to the heaviness in her chest. I stayed standing, arms crossed, with the bitter feeling of someone who never wanted to prove anything, but ended up having to expose what was obvious. The truth was out, and the time for pretending was over. I watched Owen cross the hall like a man who knew exactly what he had to do, no more doubts. He walked straight to Lauren, who was chatting with a few friends near the photo wall. She smiled when she saw him, but as he leaned in and whispered something, her expression changed. The smile faded, as if she sensed what was coming. He held out his hand. She took it. Together, they moved toward a quieter corner by the glass wall overlooking the garden. I waited a few seconds before moving, not because I wanted to join them, but because I needed to see. I walked over slowly, unnoticed, and stood near one of the columns, close enough to hear, far enough to stay out of it. Owen didn't start with accusations. He said something simple. Everything turned out just like you planned, exactly how you wanted. Lauren smiled, but her eyes were tense. Yeah, took a while, but we got there. He nodded. Maybe a little too much. She tilted her head, suspicious. What do you mean by that? Owen stepped closer. His voice stayed calm, but the chill was setting in. Did you know Cole is going to the Caribbean too? She frowned. And what does that have to do with us? He answered slowly. Isn't it odd? The same week as our honeymoon? Did you mention it to him? Lauren blinked slowly. Owen, where is this coming from? What's going on? Her tone drew attention. The words were too loud for a private talk. That was enough for Estelle to approach. Then Marjorie. A few groomsmen stopped laughing and started watching. Cole, across the room, changed direction. The room's energy shifted. Lauren tried to steer things. He's your friend, not mine. I'd never talked to him about our honeymoon. But her face told a different story. She wasn't yelling, she was dodging. Cole, Owen called, voice sharp and clear. Cole walked over, trying to act casual, like he didn't know what was happening. You told Lucas you were traveling, Owen said. Yeah, I did. To the Caribbean, right? Right, Cole confirmed, but his breathing sped up. What's wrong with going to Anguilla? And that's when he slipped. Lauren's head turned instantly. The name came out too easily. Owen didn't miss a beat. Still looking at her, he said, But you didn't tell him Anguilla. You said Caribbean. Why change it now? Cole froze. His eyes darted to me, then back to Owen. It was just habit. I don't know. I thought you'd already mentioned it. Lauren crossed her arms. You're accusing me over a coincidence? Because a friend is going to the same place? Seriously? Her voice tightened. But it wasn't real outrage, it was defense. Owen didn't answer right away. He just stared. Then he said, Your phone. Lauren looked at him, confused, then glanced toward where her purse was. She paused, took a deep breath. Oh, are you doing this really? Now I'm hiding something on my phone. Is that what you're implying? Owen didn't reply. He just stood there, waiting. His face was calm but final. Then she said, If you'd rather believe them, fine. Do what you want. I saw Owen's head drop slightly, not in defeat, but in clarity, like he'd waited until the last second for some sign, some word, some truth that would make staying worth it, but it never came. When he looked up again, there was no anger, no sadness, just the tired acceptance of someone who realized the truth too late. He stepped back twice, turned, and walked toward the exit. As he passed me, without stopping, he said quietly, You were right all along, and he left. Estelle didn't say a word, but she moved instantly. She followed her son with steady steps, standing tall, as if she knew there was nothing left for her there. Marjorie stood frozen, eyes locked on Lauren, like she was seeing her daughter for the first time. Raymond said nothing. Cole stayed still, looking like he was waiting for instructions or forgiveness. The tension in the room was thick, the kind of silence you don't explain, you just feel. That's when Lauren reacted. She didn't run, she didn't hide. She turned slowly to the center of the room and raised her voice, not in panic, but with a rehearsed pain. So that's it? One misunderstood comment and I'm left at the altar? The words echoed perfectly. There was a stir. An older woman clutched her chest. A cousin sighed loudly. You all really think I deserve this? That I planned all this just to be humiliated in front of everyone? The tears came right after, loud, visible, with no attempt to hide them. But it wasn't the cry of someone breaking inside. It was the cry of someone trying to win back the crowd. The watery eyes, the shaky voice at the right moment, the curled-up body begging for sympathy, and she got it. I saw my father step in, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Marjorie pressed her cheek to hers like the world was being too cruel to an innocent daughter. Cole stood beside her, silent, but there. They all formed a circle around her, just like always. As I turned to leave, I heard her voice again, softer but sharp. You must be happy, huh? Her eyes met mine for a split second. You got what you wanted. She didn't say it with pain. She said it like an accusation. Like even exposed, she still wanted to drag someone down with her. I didn't answer. My response was leaving, and that, to her, hurt more than any word. They stayed, all of them, surrounding Lauren like she was the only one who needed comfort, like everything that happened had happened to her, not because of her. It was the same pattern as always, her at the center, and everyone else orbiting the lie as if it were the truth. No surprise, just the same old story. And me? I just left. No words, no hope that someone would call me back. No one even looked my way. And for the first time, that didn't hurt. Because in that hall of broken appearances and cracked masks, I realized I wasn't part of it anymore. And absence, finally, felt like freedom. In the days that followed, the silence said more than any scandal could. No calls, no visits, no apologies, not even an attempt to explain what happened that night. And in a way, that was a relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to deal with fake smiles, vague invitations, or forced advice. I went back to my routine like someone shrugging off a weight. No drama, no revenge, just the sense that, finally, the truth had landed exactly where it needed to. Owen, meanwhile, completely withdrew, deleted his social media, took a leave from work. Estelle told me, in a few words, that he was giving himself space to breathe. She didn't ask about me or about Lauren, just left it hanging that he was rebuilding. I didn't need more than that. I respected his silence. That kind of pain isn't something advice can fix. And honestly, after everything, just knowing he was alive and away from her was enough. The following week, I found 2 unread messages on my phone. One from my dad, one from my mom. Both said basically the same thing. That the family had gone through a tough time, that everyone was still processing it, that there's still time to talk. I didn't reply. I didn't delete them either. I just archived them. Marjorie sent a message too, talking about guilt, fear, and love that hadn't been fairly shared. I read it slowly, then I swiped up and archived that one as well. No anger, just closure. Estelle, on the other hand, didn't text. She sent a bottle. It came in a plain wrap, no card. But there was a short handwritten note with the kind of firmness that doesn't waste words. Courage is also knowing what to leave behind. This is my recognition and my respect. That was it. A clear, quiet gesture that carried real weight. The kind of message you don't answer. You just accept and keep. The next morning, I opened an old box at the back of my closet. Inside, a handful of loose photos. I picked one up. Christmas from years ago. Lauren in the middle, surrounded by smiles. Me off to the right, slightly turned, almost cut off by the photo's edge. I held it for a few seconds. Didn't feel sad. Didn't feel angry. Just that bitter familiarity of always being squeezed into the frame. I slid the photo back into the envelope and closed the box. Some memories don't need to be erased, just starved. That same afternoon, I opened a flight booking site, something I'd always put off. There was always an excuse, a family thing, a date I had to work around. But this time, no one was waiting for me. I picked a Caribbean cruise, now that the water's warming up again. Anguilla seems nice. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for choosing something just for me. Oh, and in case you're wondering about Lauren, she moved back to California, Santa Barbara to be exact, one of those places where you can disappear and still look interesting. No public statements, no apologies, no healing posts. But a few weeks later, Cole showed up on Instagram. Nothing big, some solo pics on the West Coast, drinks, sunsets, near empty beaches, no tags, no faces. Just coincidence, I guess. Funny how sometimes freedom doesn't come with a bang. No slam doors, no shouting matches, just a step outside, a silence accepted, a conversation that never happens. You spend so long trying to fix a place you're not really wanted, and then one day, when no one expects an explanation from you anymore, you realize you've already left, and there's no need to go back. The absence that used to hurt starts to feel like relief, and the emptiness that once felt like abandonment becomes room to breathe. I grew up trying to be accepted by a family that only saw the ones who shouted the loudest. I was trained to stay quiet, not to get in the way, to always understand others, always the others. And when I finally spoke, no one celebrated. But no one could pretend they didn't hear me either. And in the end, that was enough. The justice we expect from life doesn't always show up as an apology. Sometimes it's just the moment the mask slips, and all you have to do is watch in silence. I'll never forget that reception hall. The flowers, the candles, the dress, and right in the middle of it all, the space left behind when he walked out. Owen leaving with whatever was left of his dignity, and her still standing there, protected like always. There was no confession, but even so, everyone saw it. And that was enough, because when the truth finally shows up in front of everyone, it doesn't need witnesses, just time. And time takes care of the rest. Now I'm speaking to you, the one who stuck with me all the way to the end. What did you think of my story? Would you have done anything differently? Do you know someone who's lived through something like this? Drop it in the comments. Sometimes it takes reading someone else's story to find the courage to share our own. And if this touched you in any way, then this space is yours too. I don't have all the answers. I've just learned that really listening is where most things begin.